We're in September of 2025, and if patterns hold, 2025 should be a crazy pump year. Now, starting in 2013, crypto has pumped massively every 4 years, followed by a steep decline. There's a Bitcoin halving that happens the year before that, which drives some of that, combined with massive inflows of liquidity as the components that have mostly driven this 4-year cycle. Now, the halving most recently was last year. And on schedule, you see Bitcoin's price has risen massively from its $14,000 lows. Will there be mass amounts of liquidity coming into the market that drives Bitcoin's price higher and drives the rest of the market to new highs? Well, we'll take a look at liquidity and some of the drivers of liquidity, and then we'll take a look at the charts for Bitcoin and ETH and some other crypto coins to see what's going on there. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. Now, if you, like me, came into crypto because you realize there's potential here for life-changing gains over a greater 4 to 8 year period, and you're looking for those discussions on becoming a solid, unshakable, savage investor in crypto, kind of like a Navy SEAL of crypto investing, well, you're in exactly the right place and with the right family. Now, today is Wednesday. This is the day we go deeper with Paul from DEFX joining us. I will note that if you're looking for deeper discussions, join our private Patreon group, and that will give you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. The private Discord is where the best discussions and the best info is. There are other benefits too, but you will have to join us to find out. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. Paul is not a financial advisor either. Without further ado, let me welcome Paul from DEFX. Paul, so good to have you.
Good to be here.
Well, what have you been watching this last week, Paul? My audience is always curious.
Sure. Well, as usual, just looking at the equity markets, the bond markets, dollar, obviously all crypto, etc. So it's just a kind of macro view of everything that's going on, wondering if the Trump rumors that he was dead yesterday were true, and how the market was going to react. It seemed to be getting a little bit nervous, and then it all turned out to be nonsense, which is the way of it. But generally speaking, I think the market's still a bit lethargic, getting back into the swing of things from the kind of holiday August, and we should see a continuation of the trends. The main ones that have been interesting to me have been the precious metals breakout of gold and silver looking really bullish, and obviously that's a theme that has been running concurrently with Bitcoin and some of the other markets, but it's a risk-on theme that has been accelerating. Gold at a new all-time high and silver playing catch up, and as you know, I mentioned palladium last week, which no one else would probably talk about, but that looks like, to me, it's basing, and even copper's going up. So a lot of the risk-on themes are continuing, and I'm just watching the yields very carefully. Short-term US yields look like they are continuing down, which means that the market does think a September rate cut is on the cards. Some people are in doubt about that, but it looks like that's going to happen. I just wonder if politically something crazy might happen where we get 2 cuts and the market goes off to the races. That is possible, but I think just one is fine. And the main kind of pressure point is at the moment is in the UK, and sterling looks like it's under a bit of pressure. UK yields are pushing up, and it doesn't really look good in the short term for the UK. So we might hit a bit of an air pocket, but no one else really cares about that as long as the US is doing all right. The broader trend should continue, and I think the broader trends will continue. It just we might be in for a bit of a bumpy ride politically and in terms of the markets.
Question. So the SEC was really comprised of a bunch of people who made votes on which directions to take, though Gary Gensler was the head person there. Is the Federal Reserve the same, that they have several board of governors, and because there's that pressure on one of the gals, Lisa something, to step down. If Trump was then to appoint someone else, does that mean that might sway it? Because there might be a lot of gridlock and they keep desiring to keep interest rates the same. But if even one person switched, would that possibly mean to go to like interest rates lowering much faster and maybe quantitative easing?
To be honest, I talk to a lot of economists who talk about the Fed and their policy and how they make their decisions. And most of the time, the market's ahead of it anyway. And it's all kind of nonsense, if you see what I mean. Because what they end up saying and what they end up doing ends up being a different thing. They say they're not going to raise interest rates, and then they jack up interest rates at a clip that catches everybody on surprise. And then they cut rates when they say they're not going to cut rates. So I tend to treat them like politicians, and I don't really look at it, to be honest. So I don't know how they make their decisions. I mean, I talked to someone who worked at the Fed, and she was saying that, Powell will not cut interest rates, and Powell's going to, stick it to the markets because he's going to be tough on inflation and all this stuff. And it's like, and then he goes and cuts rates. And anyway, it didn't really matter because the markets went up. So the short answer is I don't really know the politics of it, and I don't know how the voting works. I know the FOMC in the UK, the Bank of England, I should say, in the UK, it's a voting system, and you can see who votes in which direction. I thought Powell had more power. I thought he maybe takes advice and then decides. So I'm not sure whether the power is with him, and that's why Trump targets him when he discusses his policy. I'll find out after the show. I mean, I'll look it up. But all I know is from kind of anecdotal experience, in the same way that, you might drive your car and not really know how certain parts work of it, but you're quite happy with being able to drive it. That's how I see it with the markets. I don't necessarily need to know the ins and outs of the politics to understand where the markets are going to go. I mean, I can show you that visually by, I'll show you a couple of things that I look at. And one is CME Fed Futures FedWatch tool, which CME FedWatch tool. Here we go. So this is a FedWatch tool, and it just shows you what the market is thinking about interest rates going forward. September 17th, predicting that there's going to be a rate cut at 95%. If we can hit compare, and that shows you the direction that it's gone in. So 1 month ago it was at 80%, it's gone to 88, at 92, etc., etc. Now that's happened before, and it's then gone the other way to no change. So 425, 450 is basis points. So interest rates are 4.25 to 450. Then we can choose October, and we can see it's much more balanced as to whether there's going to be a rate cut. It looks like 48% against 45% think that there's going to be a rate cut from the 4 to the 3.75, which is interesting because no one's really talking about that, and very little chance of no change. Now, data can change this, data can push this around, but I tend to look at that plus the direction of the short-term interest rate future, and this is a 3-month government bond. Now, we talked about this breaking below 4.25% here and how it was calling for a rate cut, and as you can see, it's still dipping lower. And then if we take the 6 months, that's already much below 4%. It's 3.85%. So the market, which is generally ahead of the curve, is already predicting further rate cuts. The question we have to ask ourselves is why? And that's the game I play. Is the data going to look bad? Are we going to see really good inflation? The non-farm payroll is going to be shocking. Are we going to see some form of slowdown? Is there going to be a financial institution in trouble? I'm not saying any of these things I have any inside knowledge on. I don't. I'm just saying I will then ask what might drive it. And I suspect it will be a combination of perhaps weakening data, which is why Trump is shouting from the rooftops, and the fact that inflation may be showing to be under control. But the way if you look at the as I said before, the main driver of inflation is energy prices, which have been coming off and have been very well behaved. If you look at things like the base metal prices and what precious metals are doing, it's a very different story. So when they feed in, they'll have no room to cut. But at the moment, just looking ahead at the road, it looks like rate cuts, which is why when people say the stock market is overvalued here, well, they've been saying it for a long time, and it's still going up. And at the moment, there doesn't look like much of a sign that things are going to change. Now, that doesn't mean we don't get a big correction. We could still get a fairly decent shakeout. And look what happened on the tariffs. The market shook out pretty hard and went right back up again. And we may be getting overbought in the next couple of weeks, but that's the equity markets. But yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a long answer, but it is important to look at all the pieces that are kind of driving the market movements there. And it is important for Bitcoin because it doesn't produce a yield, and therefore it is considered to be a risk on play. And it's also a bit like gold, a play against loose monetary policy, which is what it was designed for. And if gold's breaking into new highs, gold, Bitcoin, and other products, you've got a product that's a hedge against that, plus it's got a utility value. It's even more interesting, shall we say. So one interest rate cut, maybe two. If two come in, that's pretty crazy. If you think about where the markets are right now, if we're looking at two interest rate cuts, what that might do.
Yeah. Well, Thale saying with Lisa Cook out, Trump will take control of the FOMC when Powell is replaced, because he'll get to replace his successor. So another governor resigned, and Trump will appoint that successor in December. You mean in addition to Lisa Cook, or Lisa Cook resigned, Sale? Mike Jones says, my favorite show. Welcome back, Rain and Paul. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, you see, the thing with this stuff is I'll be honest with you, I don't really follow American politics, and I don't follow what happens with the Fed that closely, just very, very superficially. And interestingly, I will look it up. I will, just out of my own interest, see how it works in terms of how decisions are made, etc. It just goes to show, education at school. This is the sort of stuff they should teach you, but they don't. But if you look at the Fed, all I know is the Fed is an independent company. It is not connected to the government. It's not
federal. Yeah,
it's a private company. So in many ways, they're not beholden to the government in any way, shape, or form, because it's any more than the government could say. I was going to say, dictate who Elon Musk has in his company, or whether he's running it or not. But there are other ways, and political pressure and all that sort of stuff. There are ways that their lives can be made difficult, so they decide to leave. But ultimately, from what I understand, it's not a government-owned agency, and therefore
it's more like quasi-government. So the president appoints the board's members to the board of governors, but it's not truly federal. It's quasi-central bank. So
that's really strange. That's really strange,
because it's affiliation, but it's not.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, that's an interesting distinction. I'd have to look into it, but you see, my focus is I would turn to an economist and say, okay, how does this work? How does this stuff work? Because I'm not an economist in that sense. I'm a market analyst, and I'm a trader in the sense that I'm looking at what drives the markets, what are the important factors, and to me, that's just the minutiae that is just politics, and it falls into the category of noise to a certain extent.
End up showing up in the price action anyway.
Well, it's not going to change my view, and it may accelerate it. But what's interesting about things like that is the markets have got a habit of putting in the place of all the things that it needs to do what it was going to do in the first place, if that makes sense. So, gold's broken out. Maybe there's going to be I'm not saying this is the case, by the way. I'm just saying, gold's broken out. Somebody knows something. Maybe it's inflationary. Maybe it's to do with, war. Maybe and we'll find out later on. And, what we don't see behind the curtains, behind the scenes, there must be lots of things going on. There's been a lot of vocal political pressure to cut interest rates. And that wouldn't really matter if it didn't look like rates were going to go down because the markets say they're going to go down. That to me is far more important. But you can pretty much guarantee politicians to be politicians, and people who work in finance who are in political positions, I put in the same kind of category.
Yeah. Well, let's look at anything else you want to look at before we get over to the crypto charts.
Well, just have a very quick look at so you've seen how the bond markets short term. I mean, just in case it wasn't clear, because I've got to be careful about sometimes talking about things and people not actually really understanding what they are. 3 month is 3 month treasury bills, US. So this is what the government issue in the short term, and that's what they'll pay you for 3 months. And it's relatively safe. It's very safe because the government's not going to go bankrupt, but that rate is going, well, they could, I suppose, but that rate is going down. And then further along the curve, 6 months looks like it's going down. Then we've got 2-year that looks like it's going down. And then 10-year, it's a bit more stable because over the 10-year, you'd expect interest rates to then go up. And then 30-year is a bit more bullish. So that's called the curve. So you look at the time curve and you can plot all those points, and then you can see which way the curve's moving. Is it moving up or is it moving down? And so just out of interest to show you what's going on in the UK, it's been pressuring some high levels because people are worried about we've got effectively a Labour government here, what you call a democratic government in the US, who are similarly regarded as not very good at managing the economy, and that's why yields are going up. And that's not great. It's not a good thing to be happening. We don't want businesses to be paying more for their borrowing, and individuals as well. It will slow the economy down. And in this turmoil, gold, you see this technical pattern, gold's broken out. And, as you heard me say before, it looks to me like it's gold, silver, platinum, palladium. They all look like they're going higher. So that's been interesting. As far as the equity markets, yeah, there's a few nerves around this time of year. Crashes happen September, October. It's just come off the high, testing some support, but the trend is still up. And as I say, it doesn't discount a bigger correction. That's definitely possible. But when it comes to individual like stocks, this isn't a stock picking show by any means, but Apple's breaking up. It was underperforming. I quite like to break out from here. AMD is underperforming, but Amazon, that looks like it's got more to go on the upside. Google, I mean, look at that. It's broken out. Meta, consolidating. Microsoft, it's gone higher. It's correcting, but still in an upward trend. Most of these things are looking okay. So I think the macro position is bullish. Now, MicroStrategy, we could say, is a proxy for Bitcoin, and that's come off. It's not making new highs. It actually looks like it's going to go a bit lower, and that to me points to more that Bitcoin will either consolidate or just go sideways, or maybe other things are going to outperform, like ETH, which it seems to want to do. And in the closing part of the show, last week I was talking about Solana. There are other things that are becoming interesting, and Bitcoin might churn a little bit, but I am still overall bullish because the trend is still up. So those are the things that I'm looking at. The dollar index consolidating. It's not really done a lot. I like to see how commodity currencies do, and commodity currencies are basically risk-on plays like the Australian dollar, the Canadian dollar, and they're consolidating. They're not broken down or up yet. They're in ranges, and you can see that from the dollar index. But I think there's more to come from these trends. A weaker dollar will support a higher move in most assets because it's effectively an interest rate cut. and we're going to get interest rate cuts as well. And Trump wants the dollar down. I mean, this is all pointing to a lot of liquidity coming into the market, and it's going to really bring a lot of booze to the party and extend the party. And after that, there's going to be a big hangover, as we keep saying. But, you know, we'll have to watch for the signs when we're closer to that point. But been called over many times, and we're not there yet.
Nope, not yet. That's funny. So all the booze at the party and a big hangover after, which what I love about crypto is the volatility. And for a lot of people, the volatility is bad because if you don't play the timing somewhat right, you end up buying high and then it reverses pretty heavily on you, and most end up selling low. And so the volatility wrecks them. Whereas if you're just simply buying low when everything's down and nobody's really talking about crypto, and then you sell when it's high, that volatility is an amazing thing. But you literally have to trade the site. You have to trade it countered what everyone else is doing for it to work. All right, let's take a look. So we've got ETH. Let's take a look. There's Pyth network is one of the big gainers of the week in altcoins.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at Pyth.
Yeah, I mentioned ETH in passing, but I didn't actually put the chart out. And you know what we were looking at in this big consolidation was actually, let's move it even to a monthly chart just to show you that this whole area is a consolidation, and it's taken a while for it to break out, and now it's broken out. So my expectation would be that it goes higher. And remember, I could be wrong, you know, just because I'm saying it doesn't mean it's going to definitely happen. But it looks very similar to the way gold was trading in a range for a long time. Let me show you that. See, gold did this range, and it was in this kind of range for a long time, consolidating, and then it broke out. And its breakout point was at $2,000, and this is where we are now, and it's still going up. So I'm not saying it's exactly the same. I'm just saying it's a similar sort of pattern where it's consolidated for a long time, and now it's got the opportunity to break out. And some of those breakouts, it goes up, it comes back down again, and people take profits. Some short-term traders push it around. All those things happen, but the trend is still up. So that's why I'm kind of broadly bullish on it, and expect anything that takes out a prior high, which was, look, it touched it, so that's made this area really important. And as you know, a lot of people were saying that ETH was dead and it's not going to move, and they look at other things, and clearly that has been wrong. So you know, ETH on spreads has still potentially got more to go. Where's the ETH US dollar spread? Let's go back to a daily chart, or let's try a weekly to start with. So the weekly chart, there was the base, and it's recovering from this. You see, this was a really big trend, and a couple of times I thought, well, this is it, this is over, because it was making a base and it didn't trigger. And so, like you say, with timing, or with anything, you've got to have your own strategy. It's very hard to trade someone else's strategy because you don't believe it. And you know, personally, I would find it very hard to be buying into something as it's falling, and I don't think you can do it with leverage. And I think many people trade with leverage, and that causes problems because you know, they're kind of forced out at the wrong point. And if you're not using leverage, it gives you a lot of you know, a lot of opportunity to sit with something and wait and find out if you're going to be right. And it also doesn't hurt as much if you're wrong. Now, of course, you don't make as much if it goes right, but at least you'll still be in the game. But you know, there will be crazy stories of people out there putting stuff on their credit cards. I believe me. And that to me is just madness, absolute madness.
Yeah, trading on leverage messes people up with the kind of trading that I do, because they don't have the ability to be patient, as well as it amplifies the gain. So if they're actually doing leverage trading to try to amplify their gains, the problem with that is it also amplifies your losses. And when you're just buying spot, meaning you're holding the actual thing with no leverage involved, you have an increased ability to be patient. So you're right. For leverage trading, the way that I go, it's too risky to trade with leverage. Just is. But I mostly look for smaller market caps, so the gains that you can make are tremendous, even without leverage. All right. So yeah, what's interesting was the chart that you had up, Paul, with ETH and Bitcoin. What was fascinating to me is it went down to a similar low as the previous cycle. Like not quite as low, but almost as low. And that was fascinating to me. Look how low it went. See, not quite as low, but really close to it.
And
And
like you
yeah,
say, it based slightly higher. Yeah, but it was
yeah,
an important point. Yeah.
that's interesting that it went almost as low, and then it started the up cycle. And I imagine that up cycle is going to continue. Maybe it pulls back, but we're going to see ETH outperform versus Bitcoin in the coming months, because I think we're at that part of the crypto cycle, which usually starts with Bitcoin running away, and then some of the money starts to flow in some of the altcoins because use cases start to be thought of. And then it spreads into other altcoins. And we're seeing this play out this cycle too. Some people said it wouldn't happen. We're already seeing it playing out. Of course it was going to happen. All right. We got Faller saying, hi, JNP. Greetings from rainy Belgium. Good to have you here.
Greetings from rainy England.
In the house. Yeah, exactly. Yes, it is time to look at IXS. We will add that. Wind Affinity Moon.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that. The markets do what the markets do.
Yeah, that I don't have the answer to that either. Maybe after you're gone, I'll look at the chart for Affinity with them. All right, so let's look at Pyth.
Yeah, and I see why you want to look at it, because it is an interesting chart for sure. Let's just get that up. Right, I've just chosen a different one. Oh, I don't suppose it matters which one. So let's get a daily chart to get some closer data. So chart I was looking at before, it looked like there was a moving average crossover. So there was a bit more. Oh no, there is. Sorry, maybe that took a moment to come in. So here we've got moving averages. Which ones do you choose? Doesn't really matter, as long as one's a long term, one's a kind of medium term. You can optimize these things, but the market will just change. So I just use it as a general reference. So you can see the slower one is this blue line, and the faster one is this kind of reddy orangey line, and they're getting ready to cross on the upside. So when the shorter term moving average crosses through the longer term moving average, some people call that a buy. Now you can see the market's already moved ahead of it. Some trading systems trade off that. Now you have to be careful about that as well, because people will look at the crossover points and go, oh yeah, look, I would have sold it at 34 cents. No, you wouldn't. You would have sold it where the price was at 34 cents, which was down here, which was actually at 19 cents. So it's a slow moving thing, but when markets trend, they work very well. But then markets can go into ranges, and then you get a lot of false signals. So it's slower to pick up on reversals, which is why I like to look at price action, because the price action itself can tell you that the dynamics have changed, and the moving averages are slow to respond. But there's still a positive signal, and if anything, they're not a bad acid test of the direction of the market. Some people say never buy a market when the moving averages are going down, and okay, fair enough, you can take whatever rules you like. But when it comes to this, it does look like a base is being formed, and potentially an inverse head and shoulders pattern. I don't like it when the neckline is rising like this, because it means it's going to dip and then go up, and the trigger is quite far away. But definitely we got a base here. So we got this W here with this base, and it's come back to test that point. So around here is where it should stop. Now, if it doesn't, and of course it might not, the next key support level, which it has to hold, is 10 cents. Psychological, plus it held here. It's held here and held here. Anywhere below that, and it really is looking like it's in trouble. But it's trying to break out this downward trend. So we would draw that trend line in anyway to see where those points come in. And ultimately, even if it just goes sideways and does nothing and consolidates, it will form a good base that then could set us up for a rally through this downward trend line. So for me, it's definitely interesting. It's definitely one that I could take a position on, a buy right here with a very tight stop, um, as like putting a trading hat on. But we tend to look for things on this show that are a bit more long term, and in that regard, I think I would call it a wait, just because it looks like there's been some good announcement and the market is digesting that, and it probably still needs to consolidate a bit more before we've turned this whole move around. But it is looking good, and if I was sort of long from the breakout, I would feel happy on holding it, really, and I could just put a stop below this line, which ultimately is the new trend or should be the new trend. So for me, I'm going to say it's a wait just at this point, but I do like the way the chart looks, and I'd be curious as to what drove it up, what the news was and what it does and all that sort of stuff. A bit of due diligence, as they say, but that would be my stop point.
It's interesting what drove this up. It was a fairly big and unexpected announcement. Now, Pyth is a provider of Oracle data. So like Chainlink, Pyth is providing Oracle data or price feeds on things. So DeFi needs to be able to access what is the price of Bitcoin right now? What is the price of ETH? Or what is the price of any one token or even other data, so that then it can complete its smart contracts. But it needs a reliable provider of data. So if you look to the right here, on the right it says Pyth network rose to right here. Overview. Pyth surged 91% on August 29th after the U.S. Department of Commerce selected Pyth and Chainlink to publish GDP employment data on chain. While the initial spike is cool, the partnership continues to drive institutional interest. VanEck's Pyth-based ETN and Grayscale's Trust now hold 1.2 assets under management combined. Interesting. So VanEck looks like they're possibly behind Pyth, which it's a relatively newer project. Its token has been trading since late 2023. Pyth, related articles. Trying to see. Usually it'll say who are the founding members, but it doesn't. Sounds like Pyth is associated with VanEck. That's interesting. But an Oracle service provider with Chainlink, probably their bottom is in. Some of this bottom is caused by the bear market, and some of it from token investing. They've got one more big token distribution to happen here, which will be May 15th, 2026. And then a lot of their token investing is out there. All right. I would rate this, well, it's a larger cap. So I don't really buy larger caps. So this kind of larger cap, I would say, is medium risk, medium potential for gains. But in the lower large market cap ones, so it's just under $1 billion market cap, it's not a bad time on this chart. And it jumped up a lot, but then it's pulled back. It's still only close to, I don't know, 70% above its lows. So it's still pretty cheap. I would actually rate this a buy. All right, let's take a look at Matic or POL.
Yeah. Again, that's one of those ones that we haven't looked at for a while. But just look ready to basically break out or where have we got it on there? Is it okay? Now, is that's, you see, this is something that we should have kept an eye on or had a look at before, because there is, or there has been some signs that that this has been turning around. And of course, we all do it when things aren't moving. We take our eye off the ball a little bit. But as you can see here, the lows are getting higher. So there's been some evidence of buying on pullback. We've got a good resistance point here that goes back to May, that's market's just gone through. We had a nice little consolidation near the top of the range. So it was kind of thinking about going through, and now it's just popped up again. I like the look of this. I think this has formed what should be a nice base, and it's also got a fairly decent history as well, and a good kind of name, or whatever you'd say. It's a well-known kind of project. So I would expect this to go higher and to be playing catch up. We talked about the prospects for catch up, and some of the all the interest and the noise was concentrated on Bitcoin. Exactly the same thing happened in the precious metals market, where gold was the only game in town, and none of the other projects, or not projects, but none of the other metals seem to be moving. And then all of a sudden, silver and palladium and platinum, etc., start moving. And this is exactly what we'd expect to see at this kind of time of, I guess, what you'd call the cycle. So for me, it's a buy. I like this double bottom. I like this breakout. And I think there's some good levels to consider the trade to be wrong, which is what I like to look for, is to a place to get out if I'm wrong. We can draw some trend lines in, and this would be one that I think is a fairly good representation of the direction of the trend, whilst giving it a bit of room to move against that, whilst it's working its way higher. So yeah, good one. Glad that we're looking at it, and as I say, it's one that we haven't looked at in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been outside the narrative for a long time, which is a good thing. Remember, ETH was outside the narrative for a while, and nobody was talking about it. If they were talking about it, they were talking bad things about it. And now it's reversed, and then everyone loves ETH again. And that's just how the market moves in the crypto space. So Matic has been strongly out of the narrative. I haven't heard anyone bring it up as in, I'm stocking up on Matic, which is usually a sign that it's been way outside the narrative for a while. But then looking at this price action is interesting. So it looks like we have this nice rounding bottom, and it looks like it's ready for an upturn. Again, this is a large market cap, and I'm in much riskier things. If I were buying large market caps, this is a good buying point on Matic still. I mean, it's not as cheap as it was, but it's only up about 60%. It's still even 50% up. It's still pretty cheap. I'm ready to buy. All right, let's take a look next at OMI, which we looked at last week, as it had some crazy price action.
Yeah, crazy price action. So it touched the kind of floor, which is now a ceiling level, and unsurprising that it came off there, and it's consolidating. Look, when something, I know there's a question about it, that one of the listeners is asking about, will it come back down? When something is this volatile, it's really difficult to know, and I just don't, I can answer it honestly and say I don't know. What I'm looking for, and what I have been looking for, is signs that the trend is over. And we got that with the consolidation, and then we got it with a small basing pattern, which we'd seen before. Tried to do that and it failed. And sometimes it takes a few goes, and then it succeeds, and you see these big moves. And we got some great levels that got taken out, and we got a change of dynamics. There's a big change of dynamics around here, and of course here. But I also say that when things go up too fast, that's also not good either, because we don't want it to be like a flash in the pan rally. I'd rather that the market kind of cools off a bit, consolidates, maybe does even go a bit lower, and then whatever story is out of the narrative, and then it forms a nice base, and then starts to move higher. And if people aren't talking about it, then all the better. So in the short term, I don't really know which direction it's going to take. What I do know is that it is showing signs that the trend is potentially over, and it is still from, I would consider it a buy. I think from last week, we're saying, is it a buy? Of course, it's a late buy at that point. So I'm not saying, um, there were better levels to get in, but I can't also ignore the fact that dynamics have changed. So I'd like to see it come down, consolidate, go back up again. And as it's sort of curving up towards this 54.77, which is this big floor, which is now a ceiling, I want to see that level taken out, which I think it will do. I think it might take a bit more time. And I think that might be a good thing if it takes a bit more time. Because like I say, I don't want this price action to be flash in the pan, one announcement and everybody jumps in. But it's a really good sign that things have changed. This downward trend line is key, and it's got through it. It sort of tried to here and it failed. It's got through it enough that it would, really be a break. But I don't want to be drawing this as a new high and a new downward trend line. And in order for that to happen, it needs to be back over that level. And I want to see it around here, because the pattern of a breakout is usually that the market will hold near the high point, consolidate for a few weeks, and then start to attack the highs again. That tells me that people are really, not long this, and it's got much more to go, into this sort of region. But it's kind of one step at a time. And the first step is very welcome, that it's rallied so aggressively that it showed signs that the trend dynamics have changed. And now I just think we're in the consolidation period, where some people will be looking at it thinking, oh, I wish I bought it down here. And they'll probably just sit and wait for a pullback. And hopefully that pullback will be much higher than they expect. And they'll be chasing it as it goes, back up again. So usually these moves involve the first kind of really sharp move. Whoever's bought it short term might just jump out a bit, so it causes a bit of volatility. And then the people who've missed it go, well, if it comes all the way back down here, I'll buy it. And of course, they're waiting for that. And this psychology will tell us if it can hold in where it is right now, maybe it will dip a little more, but if it can hold in at these relative levels for the next couple of weeks, that would be a really good sign, especially if it starts to curve higher. So it is a buy for me, and but I'm not expecting it immediately to go back up. I still think a consolidation period is warranted, and it will serve creating a bigger, perhaps a longer term base that will be more sustainable.
Mm-hmm. So I've been watching OMI's price action pretty closely for a long time now. And essentially zooming in a little bit closer, here's what the chart looks like. And I don't know whether it's going to break again to the upside or come back down. I would say I think it's likely to break further to the upside after some consolidation. Now, this was an amazing accumulation range. Anyone who was able to buy here, that price, which is so low, it's still a good buy here. Just, I agree with Paul on that. It's still a good buy. It's just not as cheap as it was, but the market cap was so low. It's still low. The market cap's under $100 million market cap for such a well-established project. What I like about it is, personally, for me, I have a lot of this because I feel like it has really high upside potential even from where it's at. So this is one of my favorite ones that I'm holding. And is it ready to rumble and roll? It may be. I feel like they've been too undervalued because the price swung a little too high last market cycle in 2021. And what goes way, way up usually comes way, way down. And at some point, though, it bottoms and it turns around and goes the other way. And maybe we've seen that. So for me, it's a buy. Let's take a look at DevvE and see what's going on with DevVE's price action.
Yeah. So, DevvE been a little disappointing, I have to say, because it's back to this main trend line and it's kind of fallen below it, which is not the best sign. Um, and that's after forming quite a nice base and holding on to some really good support levels and previous points. But it also doesn't look bad enough to sort of change my whole view of it. It's kind of just a bit neutral, really, where it is now. Um, what sticks out is this move here. You see this base point and the way it was trading really nicely. Came back to support, broke through resistance, bang. That should have been the extension point, and it just came off. We gave it a bit more time and said, okay, well, if it's come off and it still got higher lows, which is what this line is here, tested it. Will it go through it again? And it hasn't. It's sort of drifted lower, and it seems to be drifting lower at a fairly consistent rate from from July or so, or from that point. And it's also kind of, how do you judge it? Do you judge it on the basis of the low, or do you judge it on the basis of the high? It's kind of cornered a little bit. So it's at an inflection point where if it goes much lower, I think it's going to be triggering stops, especially below this 40 cents level, which is what's been tested here. And then ultimately, we don't want to see it down at 34 because, that's a good support level. It touched it and went straight off. So we know they'll be buying there, or they should be buying there. But there should still be a gap, i.e., from this low to here to then move higher. We don't want to see it trading and matching that point, especially in a bull market. So all that kind of shakes out into it's a wait at this point. I feel optimistic about it, but just because of the macro scene and the fact that you know I'm still classing it as an upward trend, or in a 50-50, I would just go with the bull side just because of where we are. And also a small fraction of that is potentially the category that it's in, where it's trading, where it's potentially going to be involved. But I would like to see the price action respond, and it has to respond. That's the main thing for me, and it's not as yet, despite sort of the announcements that were going to be made and all that sort of stuff. But it's also one that it's important to keep looking at, because as we've seen before, when things turn around, they turn around fast. So dynamics can change quickly.
Yeah, I agree. They can change very quickly once they do. But on the trend, yeah, I'm surprised that it broke down below this, and it just showing it's not ready to turn around yet. Maybe there seems to be some stronger support, and look at how it's kind of rounding here again. Generally, we see a big W with this being higher than this, and this is usually indication of bottoms and a turnaround. So we're in a later part of this leg. So I definitely rate this as a buy for me with my methodology of how I buy. And I'm pretty encouraged that probably some significant upside is coming in the coming months. Looking at this nice W pattern, if you zoom out, this is what we're looking at. And it's not going to be perfectly symmetrical or anything. It's just a general. But we want to see a higher low, which is what we've got. And then usually it breaks on up to the upside. So DevvE chart looks very bullish for the future. With still an incredible price point right now, it probably shouldn't be as low as it is. And yet it is. I like those kinds of situations. Overall, its market cap is really low. Let me pull up. Let's see what it is. See if CoinMarketCap has the right numbers. Wow, $39 million market cap for a project that's the layer 1 blockchain that can do 8 million transactions per second faster than any network out there. Incredibly low market cap. This is why I like this one. This is one of my largest holdings in crypto. I think it has significant upside potential if it catches traction. And I think it will probably catch traction, but that's kind of the risk you take. You don't know for sure if it will. If it does, it could go way, way, way higher than here, like to the tune of billions of dollars of market cap. And so it's got 50, 100, even 500x potential on this. Whether it'll realize that or not, we don't know at this point. That's what the hope is. All right, let's see. Chris just barely joining us. Chris, what's going on? Good to see you. Sailing Pyth popped on the announcement that the U.S. government was going to post statistics blockchain that would be aggregating and feeding the data with Chainlink. Yep. Pink Panther, looking at DevvE. All right, was there one I missed? Got that. Dun, dun, dun. ETH promising 10 million transactions per second, supported by Eric Schmidt from Google. Challenger? Well, promising is an interesting word. So what we know about DevvE is that the 8 million transactions per second was tested in like 2016, 2017. And so promising, like Cardano's promising to be able to, because they are developing sharding and they hope to be able to do a million transactions per second per shard. I think as they add more shards, they can scale it to more transactions per second. But that's probably still a way. So ETH, we will see, because there's promises and then there's delivery. If ETH can deliver, that's very promising. Pink Panther wants us to look at AERO. Let me take a look, see what AERO is about. Oh, Aerodrome Finance. Okay. Sure, we can take a look at Aerodrome Finance. I haven't thought about them in a long time. Scroll down here. Next generation automated market maker and decentralized exchange. That's right. Specifically designed to be a central liquidity hub on Base. So I think this is the big exchange on Base network, which I tend to like these decentralized exchanges, especially on Base. So his token has gone way up from 2 cents up to $1.21. Boy, it's had some of its major gains. It was really cheap here. What kind of upside does it have? That's a great question. Paul, were you able to find prices on this one? There we go. We got you on mute.
Sorry, yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. It's got a nice trend, and it's fairly consistent in the way that it's working from this low. So maybe not exactly, but from April it's been moving up, and you can see the way it's doing it is consistent. And if we look at the bigger picture, starting point is down here. So over $1.18, it's still effectively an upward trend. Where are the big levels ahead? Well, very, very clear. We've got, this is the target, $2.35, but often the market will get drawn to those levels, and this is the journey that it's trying to take. So for me, I like this sort of stuff because you've got a good trend, got a good trend rate. It's not too crazy. It's working its way up, goes up, has a pullback. We can put a stop somewhere that's reasonable, which would be below $1 psychological, below sort of 95 cents. If it's down there, then we know what our risk is. The upside potential is towards this area here. So that doesn't guarantee it's going to get there. It might get there. It might go more than that. But I like the look of this trend. And I know we're going to look at IXS as well, because that's been asked. And, you'll see the difference between those two charts, and that's why I like this one. And as I say, it's a probability thing. It's not that guarantees that it goes up. It just, you know, looks better than some others, and therefore it should move higher. But that obviously not is not always the case, and that's why we have things like stops, or that's how I have to trade things, unless I can, you know, look at it from a you know, a value investor's point of view and just keep buying it as it comes back, because I like the fundamentals and I don't look at the fundamentals, so it has to be all technical. That's why I have those stop levels. So yeah, very interesting. Good one to look at.
Yeah. All right. Aerodrome Finance, just taking a look at some of the details of it. Price action, there's not a huge history to look at. It did get very cheap after it launched and probably had some pre-sale token vesting to push the price down. And really base caught on with some meme coin trading here, and the token has traded in these levels since then. $1 billion market cap. I think this one's got maybe 10 billion to 20 billion potential. I think base does do really good in the coming bigger bull run. Always makes me a little bit nervous with decentralized exchanges, that if they get hacked, their token can go way, way down, and they become a huge target for hackers, very sophisticated hackers. So that would be a concern. Other concern is I would really rather be buying along this lower trend line than the higher one. So for me, this would be a wait, because if I was able to pick this up somewhere at 50 cents and below, just better upside potential even for a blue chip. So it's a great suggestion. I definitely like the project. It just with where the price is, it'd be a wait for me. So let's take a look at, yeah, one I missed. Where did it go? IXS. Let's take a look at IXS.
Yeah, so IXS is a bit of a different story, really. As you can, as the chart reveals, what we have is not a whole lot of data over a year, but not much over a year. And so we'd have to investigate that a little bit. The price action, you can tell, or I can tell, is there's not a lot of volume here. It's spiking around. We've got some odd looking prices, and that can just be data feeds. But that usually happens when there's not much volume going through. But the overall pressure is towards the downside. You can see it from the averages. You can see it from the way the highs have been pressuring slightly lower. And look at where we are now. Big support here, which is broken, and it's come back to it again. So it's retesting it. And the margin from where it is to the ultimate low, if that is indeed a tradable price at 0.08, we don't know if it really traded there or whether that was just a bad data point, because there's a few on there. So it's difficult to know. But either way, the market is at the low of the trend, which isn't something that I would step into. Now, perhaps if the fundamentals are really good and it's a different sort of strategy that you want to employ, maybe that works for someone else, but not for me. And I can only look at it through my lens. And until this either reverses, breaks a downward trend line, shows some form of change in market dynamics, for me, it's definitely a wait. And I would be looking at other projects. But that doesn't mean I'd completely throw it out, because there's also this level at 14 cents, big build up. Let's just zoom in here so you can see it more clearly. Look how many times it's hit that level. So if I was to change my view, it would be, look, if it gets through here, that's such a fantastic resistance point. It's hit so many times that a breakthrough would be the first tripwire to tell me the trend is changing or the dynamics are changing, aside from a very sharp move upwards that suggests that again, there's some powerful buying going on and an increase in volume. But for the moment, that's all. If it does this, I'd have to wait for it to happen. So unfortunately for me, it's definitely a wait.
All right. I would agree with you based on the price action. So during the bear market got really cheap, and we see probably the bear market lows right here in October 2023. It then ran up tremendously to 80 cents and it's come off that by a lot, but might be a little bit more to go. I don't see any rounding. Now, IXS is institutional exchange settlement layer, provides blockchain tokenized infrastructure built for institutional real world assets. So overall, its market cap is back down in an attractive price range. I would say wait, just because I'm looking for a little bit juicier price than this. Probably won't go to the 1 cent it was here, but it might go to about 5 or 4 or 3 cents. And that would be an amazing pickup. So the market cap has come off considerably from where it was, but might have a little bit further to go. It's solidly in the DeFi narrative, which I don't know DeFi narrative is quite ready to hit. So IXS gets a wait for me. Oh, big A. Good morning, fellas. Just bought DEFX for the first time. Average price of 1.6 cents. I know it wicked down there to such cheap numbers. It was amazing. My friend Randy called me. He was able to pick up a bunch at that. I was super excited. Yeah. ONDO arrival for DevvE. ONDO. I mean, there's lots of competitors in the same space. Just because you have the fastest transaction per second doesn't mean you're actually going to get all the contracts. So probably ONDO stands as a beacon in the realm of decentralized finance, aiming to democratize access to institutional grade financial services. Founded in 2022 and based in Cayman Islands, ONDO operates through a unique ecosystem that bridges traditional finances with blockchain technology. Definitely sounds like a competitor. But look where its market cap is, $3 billion market cap, and DevvE is like 1/80th of that market cap. So if DevvE were to go to the market cap of ONDO, that would be like an 80x increase. Dan says, hey, in late, shout out to Jay and Politip. If you can't find a chart, always go to Dex Screener's charts. Pretty much everything on chain. There's decent tools on it as well, so you can explore it. Good suggestion.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. I think you might have told us that before and I'd forgotten about it. So thanks for the reminder.
All right. Well, that's what we want to look at for this week. Paul, we appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Just one final thought is if we look at the fear and greed index, it's all the way down at 42. So,
Ooh.
you know, the heat has come off the market quite a lot, really. So I think that's an interesting sign. And also, I think you've got to use the amount of sort of requests as a sign as well, haven't you, to see how inverted commas busy the market is. And in many ways, that's a good sign as well, because you know the guys who are watching the channel right now, those are the ones who have an appreciation for the fact that you've got to keep looking at the market every week, even when it's boring, even when there's not much going on, because it shows you the contrast for when things are going absolutely gangbusters and people are falling over themselves to buy it. You know, when we talk about what is the sentiment signal, it's when perhaps we almost get overwhelmed with requests to look at different markets. But yeah, we saw this in around the bases of Bitcoin. You know, how there weren't many people around because they thought it was all over. And again, it is a good sign that you know, it's a little quieter. But I think part of it is the holiday, to be fair. But we shall see. All to play for.
Yeah. there's in the song that I play at the end of the show, like one of the principles that I think about is buying when it's boring. What it means it's boring is it seems like nothing's going on and people don't really pay attention. Exactly like times like this, when the fear and greed index goes farther down and just there's general fear for buying, but also it just kind of seems boring and dull. That's usually when your good pickups are. And what you're doing is you're scanning through the markets to see what is it a really punished price that shouldn't be, or at least that's how I play it.
Yeah, it's a great time to do your homework. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right,
Thanks, guys. Have
Paul,
a great
you're
week.
amazing. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm not sure about that, but we shall see. Take care, guys. See you next week.
Also humble, yes. We'll see you. All right. So for those that want us to take a look at DEFINITY's price, let me pull it up. And here we go. Now, we've had this floor down here, and it reached right down to that floor. And that was an amazing week down. The big A, you got an amazing price. And one of the critical points of really making great gains is buying low. And I do think anything below 5 cents on DEFINITY is amazing. But particularly at 1.8 cents or 1.6 cents, that's an absolutely incredible price. So you bought up the floor when it went down that low. That is incredible. Yeah, I was talking to Randy the other day. There's some other big DEFINITY news that won't be ready to be released for a while, but further use cases for the token. I think DEFINITY's got an amazing future, and it's just at this really low price point because most people in the crypto space don't know what DEFINITY is. So it's showing on CoinMarketCap at 2 cents. I think CoinGecko is the one that gives us an idea of what the market cap's at. So it's saying a price of 2.167 cents. That would give us a market cap of 3.3 million for DEFINITY, which is a really low market cap. This is the type of thing I like, and this is one of my bigger holdings in the crypto space. And I think it's got potential to go 100x from here, maybe 300x, maybe even 1,000x. That's why DEFINITY is one of my favorites. I think there's strong underlying fundamentals behind DEFINITY and what they do. They're making great profits in the market, so they've got sustainability, which I like to see. And most of the crypto space is unaware of them. So it's like the perfect storm. That's what I like to invest in. Now, I wanted to share a topic. I've seen this popping up a couple of times. One of my gold rainmakers asked me, they were quoting this gal that said, let's face it, guys, the major runs that we saw in 2017, 2021, where things went thousands of X's is over and that we just need to lower our expectations. And I was thinking about that the past couple of days. What usually happens is people get fixated on whatever token. So one of my big gainers from the last cycle was Cardano. And Cardano was massively underpriced. People had overbought it because it had gone really high in 2017's run. It swung too far to the downside. Though most were aware of Cardano, most weren't buying it. And so I thought Cardano was a really, really good value. One of my other big gainers was Axie Infinity, which wasn't known at all. There was this awareness gap. So, blockchain gaming, I thought was a great concept, great idea. And that there was almost no awareness of it. And when that awareness gap was closed and most of the crypto space learned about Axie Infinity, the token price did thousands of X's. So when someone makes the cases that there's no 1,000 X's left or very few, well, there is always very few. There's not that many that do it. But those that do it, what you're looking for is small market cap coins where there's an awareness gap. Because even Cardano didn't go thousands of X's because there wasn't an awareness gap. So in order for something to have those higher gains of 500 to 1,000x, it's got to have strong fundamentals. Like there's got to be some good use case or something special about it. Good narrative. There's got to be a really strong team behind it so that it's got potential to get in mainstream view and everyone getting behind it. And then there's got to be some kind of awareness gap that people just don't know about the project. And that's what's going to create the skyrocketing price that might go 1,000x. And there are still plenty of those to come. It's just some people hope to get that by getting Cardano now, or something, say Axie Infinity's token now. There's just not that awareness gap to take it up 1,000x with massive momentum. A lot of the crypto space is already aware of it. So it's no longer that hidden gem. It's just potentially a good project in the blue chip space that can get some gains. So with that comes risky things, because if you're looking for something where there's an awareness gap, well, what happens if it never really catches on? So you're going to take some risks with huge potential upside if it goes together well. And there's still plenty of those. So many analysts about the market are just wrong. Just like 3 months ago, many big players in the space were calling ETH pretty much dead and that it wasn't going to survive much longer. And yet, just look how times have changed. ETH has started to go up, get recognized, and then all of a sudden the sentiment swings around completely. I know some people in sentiment are saying that, oh, we just got to face it. Gains aren't going to be as high as they were. This cycle is going to be crazy. Now, I'm hearing a lot of sentiment that we might be in a prolonged cycle, this one. That one, there's some merit to, because the Federal Reserve has been so slow to lower interest rates and to do quantitative easing, which has dragged out when the run has happened so far. I think as they do that, there's also a lot of institutional money coming, and a lot of that, there's going to be institutional FOMO, and a lot of that's going to play out over a longer time period. So that recent sentiment that a lot of people are talking about, I can get behind. They may be right. I still think we're going to have some price action happening, some strong price action in the coming 3 months. But I do think there'll be probably a pullback, and then maybe a bigger prolonged run that's prolonged. Now, if that happens and we have a strong run that lasts like a year and a half now, think of the .com boom and then bust. This might be the Web3 boom and bust if it happens that way. The .com boom had like a year solid of crazy runs, maybe even a year and a half, and then it collapsed really, really hard. That may be what's coming for us, is a solid year to year and a half of massive gains in the crypto space, but then a collapse, which means the cycle continues. So if you've sold high and you kept that capital liquid on the side, you're then prepared to buy low again and can do amazing. Pink Panther says, bullish on OMI with Stacker, blue skies ahead. I agree. Fundamentals behind OMI are incredible. What VeVe has done is top notch. Like, people are like, oh, if they expect it to be perfect, it's not. It's just a well-run, good, solid company with good founders. And then what Dr. Profit has done with Stacker just augments that. So they work really good hand in glove. I like Dr. Profit a lot, and he's added significant value to the VeVe ecosystem. I think VeVe is going to become the #1 digital collectibles app in the future. And if so, their token is likely to do extremely well. I have notifications on. There's a single guy that's been dumping, so was ready to catch a wick down when Infinity happened. Yeah, that's amazing. Good call on that. All right, everyone. Enjoy the wrap. You know what this wrap is all about. We will see you all soon.
To the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, right before you could, was told to buy when it was pouring like a rain, make it should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss, cause I always made the time in mind. I take the one out, cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker, running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. Principles are simple, to leave in a lot. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling the parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be crafting. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.